Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peterisms, where I tell stories of my life and just little things I've learned as I've grown into the person that I am today. And I have 4 books sitting next to me right here that I'm going to pick meditations or just readings from in just a second. But I wanted to talk about the motivational self-help book that I'm doing every month. So in November, I started this thing where I was going to read a self-help or inspirational, motivational book every month. That way, by the end of the year, I would have 12 books that I would have read that would really help me be a better person, if that makes sense. Because I love to read self-help books anyway. I don't love the word self-help. I call them more like motivational books, inspirational books, and things like that. So the first book that we read in November, I read, and I think some of you did too, was The 4 Agreements, which was extremely helpful to me. I loved that book, and it really made me look at things in a completely different way. And in fact, I can't believe that I hadn't read that book until then, you know? And then for December, I picked The Celestine Prophecy by James Redfield, and an extra credit book was The Secret, because I wanted to go into the year, you know, really thinking about the law of attraction, and like it had really helped me when I read it. The Celestine Prophecy, or The Celestine Prophecy, when I read it right after I got sober, literally the week after I got out of treatment, had such a profound effect on me that I wanted to reread it, because it's been 25 years, and I wanted to see if it still had the same impact on me, the same effect that it did back then. And in all honesty, I didn't really remember what it was from 25 years ago that it had impacted me so strongly. I do now. So in December, I just, you know, things got away from me, and I didn't end up reading those 2 books. So I carried The Celestine Prophecy and The Secret over to January. Those are January's books. And I'm going to talk about February's book in just a second. But, so last night I finished an audiobook that I've been listening to, and I started listening to The Celestine Prophecy by James Redfield. I'm like 2.5, 3 hours into it already, and yeah, I totally remember what it was about me at that time that really resonated, like really, like this book spoke to me, if that makes sense. So the book, when you go into it, it's about this guy, and he is, if you're not reading it, I highly recommend that you read it. I'm going to do a review of it over here on this channel when I finish it. But it's about this guy, and he's very interested in like metaphysics and things like that, and New Age and all of that, you know, different philosophies of thinking, whatever, self-improvement as well. And he has introduced this idea that there are these insights that exist, and they come from Peru, and the government has tried, so it's an adventure story too. So the government has tried to keep these insights like quiet. They don't want people to know about them. And so it's kind of very dangerous, like he's on the run through the whole thing too. So the first insight though is that at the same time around the world, and this was supposedly at the end of, you know, the last century going into this century, that people would start having this group consciousness about coincidental things that were happening, that people would come into our lives and we would feel like that, you know, I don't know what's happening or whatever, and that there was a restlessness about us that we were having. And so this restlessness that we felt like we should be doing something with our lives, but we didn't necessarily know what it was supposed to be, or we knew what it was supposed to be, but we didn't know how to get there, which I think many of us relate to, then is spurned by, you see somebody on the street. Like, for example, maybe for the last 30 years, like I've been, you know, this is my 30-year high school reunion coming up, you know, I've wanted to be like a rock star, let's say, okay? And maybe 30 years ago, I was in a band, and, you know, like, I loved being in a band in high school. None of this is true, but let's just say, okay? I mean, don't get me wrong, I'd love to be a rock star, but so, you know, like, let's just say that's been on my mind a lot lately. Like, I've been thinking a lot, and this goes into the law of attraction too, that I've been thinking a lot recently about, you know, having this again in my life, or maybe being a rock star, or being like, I wish I could have had that. Now, looking back in my life, I can never have that, and it's never too late. It's never too late, you know? You gotta remember that. There are 80-year-olds that are still dreaming and accomplishing things. So, you know, so then all of a sudden you're like walking, you know, somewhere, and you're with your wife or whatever, and all of a sudden you run into this guy that you used to play in a band with, like in 10th grade, okay? And you haven't seen him in 30 years. And so, yes, it's a coincidence, but is it? Or is it that the world, we're bringing these things together, and there's some kind of underlying like energy or electricity that is bringing us all together to make our world work in a certain way and all this kind of stuff? That's really what the book is about. Well, you know, if you think about me coming out of treatment at that time and being really lost and not really knowing, like, because I can remember reading this book and I read it in one night and I woke up the next day and I was like, I'm back. Like, I've got some things to do. I'm here. I have one life and I need to make the most of it. Reading this book, again, like, I totally know why I felt that way again. And I have to tell you, it really lit a fire of passion in me last night when I was driving around listening to it. This book is fantastic. I had forgotten how empowering it is to take back your life and to be like, there is a purpose to my life. There is a meaning to my life. I need to figure out what it is, and I need to get on the track to figuring that out. And so I'm listening to that book. When I get done with that, I will listen to The Secret, because I read the physical copy and I watched the movie, but I want to listen to the audiobook because I haven't done that, and I will do a review of both of those. I highly recommend The Celestine Prophecy. It is so well done, and these insights about really who we are in the world, and do we have a purpose, and, you know, do we feel like we're missing out on our purpose? Do we feel like we're bored in life? Do we feel like we're not accomplishing the things that we want to? Like, it really pushes you to think about those things, and it also makes you start looking at all of the things in your life, because, you know, I'm not somebody that believes in coincidences. I'm not, okay? So it's interesting to me listening to it, and it's like all these things start coming up, and this guy's like, okay, these are not coincidences. These are signs from the universe that I'm supposed to be doing something right now. So I've got to figure out what it is. And I'm very much you don't have to believe that, but I'm very much a believer of that. So, okay. Oh, and then the book that I have decided to read for February, I have looked everywhere here. I have a physical copy of it, but I did buy it on Audible. It's less than 2 hours long to listen to. It was on sale on Audible. I think Audible, they may still be having it, this huge sale over there. So I got it for cheap. And the book is called Make Your Bed, and it's about this, it's one of those small little books, very much like Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, but it's shorter than this. I can't remember what the guy's name is, but he was in the military for a long time, and it's just lessons that he learned by being in the military. And so I want to read it because I've just heard fantastic things about it as far as little simple lessons. Like, those little simple lessons work really well for me. And then I also want to read it and talk about it because I think it would make a great, you know, gift for somebody or graduation present. And yeah, I've just heard good things about it. He's like going around and doing like the speaking thing now too, you know, so okay. Did you ever, like, it's very similar, I think, in some ways to, I can't remember his last name, Randy. He did the last lecture. Did you guys ever, okay, I never, like, fully read the book. Like, I read some of it and skimmed some of it, but I didn't fully read the book. But I did watch the video of his last lecture. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, Randy, I can't think of his last name. I have the book up there, too. But I think it was at Carnegie Mellon University. He was a professor, he was a science professor, and he had gotten diagnosed, I think he's since, I'm almost positive he has since passed, diagnosed with like a brain tumor or something. So at that school, they do this thing that when you're resigning or retiring, you do your last lecture, and anybody can come and listen to it. Well, he ended up turning it into a book, and the speaking thing that his speech is incredible. It doesn't even feel like a speech, okay? I mean, it is literally like you're sitting in a college classroom listening to a lecture. It is absolutely so fantastic. It's about accomplishing the dreams in your life, and it's about really what is your life and what does your life, you know, represent. So anyway, I really highly recommend that book too if you haven't heard of it before, The Last Lecture. And the battery is flashing at me, so please pause and I will be right back. Okay, so, you know, I was just thinking while I was changing the battery, I was thinking to myself, you know, I think that it's probably one of the fundamental questions that we don't ask ourselves enough. What is my purpose? Or what is my meaning here while I'm here, you know? And while I'm here, makes it sound like we're gonna be so conscious of when we're not, when the reality is, for many of you that don't believe in a higher power, don't believe in an afterlife or whatever, this is it, you know? So, you know, for me, I'm always like, okay, we were given this life. Life is a gift. And I know that there are hardships and that a lot of parts of life don't feel like a gift, right? But life really is a gift. And, you know, I try to just look at it and see, what can I do to make the most out of this life that I was given? I ask myself often, like, what is my purpose? What is my meaning to being here? I don't necessarily believe that we have to have some huge, deep meaning, you know? I think there are many of us maybe whose meaning is just to, and I'm not talking about like, okay, I was born because on this date I was supposed to be here to, you know, save this person or whatever. I'm not talking about that kind of stuff. I don't know that I necessarily believe in that stuff. I like to believe in that kind of stuff because I think it makes for a more interesting, mystical world, but I don't know that I do on the like really deep inside. But I do believe that we each of us have a purpose that we design for ourselves. And I do believe that there's a purpose that maybe we even design for ourselves before we come here. I do kind of believe in that. But, you know, I often think to myself, you know, like, well, what is my purpose? What am I supposed to be doing? You know, and I think for me, a big part of my purpose is taking the mistakes that I have learned in my life and passing them on for other people to possibly learn from, hopefully, or to relate to or whatever. And for me to take the advice and the life of other people and learn from that as well to become the best person I can possibly be, and then as a result of that, to just enjoy life, you know? I think I thought for a really long time that I had to have this really deep purpose and meaning to life, that I was supposed to do this or supposed to do that, you know? And I felt driven, like after I got sober, I felt super, super driven. But today, I think I feel more like my duty, my role, my purpose here is to learn as much as I possibly can, okay, about the human condition and myself and how to be a better person, how to be the best person I can possibly be on a daily basis. And then the next day wake up and be a better version than that best version I was before, right? And when I fall short of that, to look at that and learn from that. And then to enjoy life to the best of my ability. I really believe that that is what life is about, you know? Charlie Brown. So, okay, let's get into these meditations. It'll be interesting if I read a meditation that has something to do with that. Won't that be funny? Interesting? Coincidental? I think not. Okay, January 25th, we're going to go the Daily Book of Positive Quotations. Kindness. 3 things in human life are important. The first is to be kind. The second is to be kind. The third is to be kind. Henry James. Doctors pledge to, first, do no harm. We can go one step further. First, we will be kind. Let us approach every situation looking for ways to be kind to others. Even if our kindness isn't returned, we will be better for setting an example and living up to our principles. Today, I will do at least one kind thing for someone else. You know, at the end of my vlog every day, I always say, you know, and most importantly, tell somebody how much they mean to you. Talk to somebody that has impacted you and say, hey, listen, I love you. You've really impacted my life in a positive way. Or just do one random act of kindness and don't tell anyone. The don't tell anyone part is for you. It's not for anybody else. It's because we learn humility from that. We learn humility from doing acts of kindness, not for pats on the back, not for congratulations, not for you're really a good person, but just because it's the action of kindness, right? So when you're practicing kindness for no other reason, like, you know, okay, it's like buying coffee for somebody at Starbucks behind you. Have you ever done this? And then you kind of like slowly go away to see if like they see you and they're like, you know what I mean? Okay, we don't need all that. It's about buying the coffee and just moving on, right? Why are you doing it? And, you know, there have been days in my life where I feel like I'm really practicing kindness in a positive way. And there are other days where I'm looking for validation, you know what I mean? And maybe I need it. And that's okay too. You know, I mean, if we go home and we're like, yeah, guess what I did today? You know, I helped this, you know, the person across the street or what, like that's okay. Okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Maybe it just means that we need a little bit more growth in that area. It's called altruism. Okay. And that's when you do things not for the applause of other people, you know? And I have been blessed in my life to have many people put in my life that are extremely kind, practice kindness on a regular basis, and don't do it for any kind of validation. They just do it because that's who they are as a person. I believe they have been put in my life, not because I am surrounded by kindness, which is awesome, but I believe they've been put in my life as teachers to teach me what it is like to be that, you know, what it is like to do things for others just out of the kindness of your heart, not for any other reason than to just practice kindness and to practice it. And if you're not good at it, like, you know, I have to practice it, okay? I have to think about, okay, what's a kind thing that I can do, you know? Because I want to be a more kind person. I want to be a more compassionate, gentle-souled person. And to get there, I have to practice it. I think we all do, you know? So that's a great meditation. Okay. Let's read from Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. I'm going to actually just randomly pick one out. Understand separate realities. This will be interesting because I don't know anything about this. This is chapter 44, actually. Incidentally. While we're on the subject of being interested in the way other people do things, let's take, well, I don't want to, if this goes all in order, I'm going to read it in order. So let's go to this Day of Healing meditation book. I'm kind of afraid to read from this book, you guys, because I didn't love it the first time I read from it. So let's go to January 25th and let's see what it says. Okay. Only those means of security are good, are certain, are lasting, that depend on yourself and your own vigor. Machiavelli. What is our security based upon? This is a vital bottom line question. Security is a basic need of all humans, but as with all quests, if we look for the object of our search in an area where it cannot be found, we court certain frustration and failure. Many would base their security on outside conditions, that is, building our house on sand. Beauty passes, fame is fleeting, wealth can quickly evaporate, and health is fragile at best. What then is safe to count upon? Only one security can be taken away, and it resides within. Security based on our own belief in ourselves and our ability not only to cope and survive, but to celebrate life, is the only security that lasts. As hard as it may be for adult children to learn they can trust themselves, it still is the only lasting security. My security rests in the gains I've made in the program. I've never had a stronger sense of self. I actually think it's a really good meditation, you know, in talking about, I think in codependency and talking about what we are dependent on. And codependency has such like a negative connotation, but it's not necessarily a negative thing, you know. I think in looking at what things make us feel more secure, you know, what things make us, is it being able to pay the bills, which is probably a big one for me, you know, I mean, once all the bills are paid for the month, I'm like, whew, okay, that's done. You know, is it having a house to live in or food on our table? I also think that, you know, gratitude and practicing gratitude on a daily basis also makes us look at our lives in, towards other, what's the word I'm looking for? Make us look at our lives in relation to other people, right? And people that have less than us, and being grateful for what we have, right? So it's hard to look at that and want to really live in the superficial when you're like, I'm so grateful because I have food on my table. There are people tonight that have no food. They don't know where their next meal or glass of water is going to come from, period. They have nowhere to sleep, and they are sleeping outside in bitter, freezing cold weather, right? I have a lot to be grateful for in my life. I need to stop complaining if I find myself in that place, right? So I think that's true. So where do we find that security? And, you know, what makes us feel secure? I think in relation to being an adult child of an alcoholic, one of the things that's tough is that you never know what you're walking into. Like, I never knew at the end of the school day, like, what I was going to walk into. Was I going to walk into Little House on the Prairie, chili dinner, and my mom, like, you know, reading me stories before I went to bed? Or was I going to walk into a mom that had been drinking all afternoon with her friends? Like, I never knew, you know? And I think that's where we talk about security and stability. It's scary for us because we don't know. So we are people that like consistency. We don't like change. We like regularity. Usually, once we have grown up and grown out of that, like if you grow up in chaos, you like chaos. You do very well in chaos. You strive in chaos, right? Thrive in chaos, not strive. You thrive in chaos, right? But once you grow up and you grow out of that and you don't want chaos in your life anymore, you're like afraid of it. Like I'm afraid of it sometimes, right? Like I just don't like change. I don't like chaos. I don't like any of it because I don't know what's to come, you know, and that's the fear, is you never know what's next. You know, when is this going to end? When's the night going to end? What's it going to be like? Is there going to be this? Is another friend going to show up at 9 o'clock? You know, like, are we having dinner? Is there going to be dinner? You know, it's all those fears that go through your head. My mother always put dinner on my dinner table. I mean, she would want that known. So, but you know, it was always sad. It was like, not that if she didn't, it would make her less of a person. It would make her in her own addiction, right? But, you know, I think that, like, I think that's where a lot of that fear of security comes from. I've always talked about, you know, through the years since I got sober, that I look at sobriety and I look at my growth as a person in recovery and as just a human being as building a house, right? And if you were building a house, you would want to first build a very strong foundation and make sure that, you know, the walls and the drywall and all that stuff are really strong. You want to maybe make it a brick house, you know? That's not going to blow over in the wind. Or if, you know, whatever kind of house you have, you're going to want to make sure that it's like really, really strong, you know? And you're not going to go into this house and think, oh, I can't wait till I have these curtains or whatever. If you do, then maybe we need to and I'm not talking about today when we're driving around looking at houses. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about if we're relating building a house to our lives, you would look at your life first, hopefully, and say, where do I need to build a strong foundation? And for me, my strong foundation comes from being sober. Being sober comes first and foremost in my life, because if I don't have my sobriety, I don't have anything else. If I'm not sober, my husband's gonna be gone, my family's not gonna want anything to do with me, I'm not gonna be able to take care of myself. I'm not even gonna probably have a place to live because I'm just gonna all let it go away. And so for me, my sobriety comes first and foremost. That's literally the foundation to my house that I live in, right? The trips and all that other kind of stuff, that's the curtains and the paint. That's what looks beautiful based on where I have built my foundation. So for all of us, we have that. You don't have to be sober for that. It's like, where could your foundation start? You know, maybe it's on getting an education. Maybe it's on putting in so many years in a certain organization that you want to work at. You know, maybe it's in being married for so long, you know, and having kids and things like that. It's like, where do you want your foundation to start so that when you look back on your life, that has always been the foundation for the life that you have today. So it's a good question to ask yourselves, you know? It's a good question for me to ask myself. Anyway, let me know what you guys think about all of that. Put it in the comment section below. I love you, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.